Welcome to the Money Game podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today's guest is Malkit Purewal from Savoys Properties. Savoys are property developers in the surrounding areas of London that have accumulated a really impressive property portfolio. With over 500 tenants, Malkit explains how he's built his property business, also while working a full-time job, to the point where he could quit and go full-time into property, which is good to listen to, because I feel like a lot of people go through this, or they certainly wish they could. As a professional footballer building a property business whilst playing to eventually replace that income, I could really relate. We also talk about the importance of building a brand, teams and partnerships in business. Also, for any aspiring property investors or developers who are struggling to purchase properties or get lending for whatever reason, Savoys and their team have a really interesting project that they've launched to lend a hand with that, basically. So we'll talk about this in the podcast too.
Life's a game. You understand the rules of the game. It's usually be played. We spent £500,000 on the build, and then we've ended up having that valued at £2.5 million.
Market, thanks so much for coming on. Pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Unfortunately, your business partner couldn't come.
Yeah, no, he's tied up with...
What excuse did he come up with?
We've got some change in our lettings team, so he's just carrying out some interviews today, so he's a little bit preoccupied.
Yeah, we're still going to talk about him though, aren't we? He's not getting away with that easy. So for a bit of context, people that don't know you, you and Sanjay, so you're Savoys Properties, you're hugely successful property investors. You've got over 500 tenants, which is just super impressive. But it's not always been like that. You guys, you haven't been investing in property or being property investors from young. You had a job at, what were you doing before property?
Okay, so, well, just to sum it up, myself and Sanjay have known each other for over 30 years. So we were both met on the first day of secondary school. Yeah. We both went down different career paths. So Sanjay was working in his family business. I ended up going down an IT route, and I started as a computer software developer. It was basically as a result of the dot-com boom bust that I realized that, look, people were losing their jobs and redundancy. So I thought, look, we need a pension plan. And when looking into it, property was, for us, the best way forward. Yeah,
but it was only a friendship right? That you wasn't in any sort of business together at that time?
No, it was literally friendship. How it actually worked was myself and Sanjay went on a night out. We had a few beverages, came back. Sanjay said, well, why don't you come back in, just have, we'll have one more drink and you can just go home. We live nearby. I thought, okay, yeah, sure. So as I came in, went in the living room, his dad was there. Sanjay just went straight up, went to bed.
Pissed,
right? Yeah, standard. And then I actually just started speaking to Sanjay's dad, and he goes, look, do you know what? Mortgages are really cheap now. It's so easy now to get buy-to-let finance. And he goes, Malkit, you really need to get in property. I went back. I was like, my head was buzzing. I'm like, okay, do you know what? Yeah, property, let me have a look. And I remember opening up the Leader paper. This was early 2000. And I saw like an auction for a two-bedroom house. And I remember it was guided at around 80K in Uxbridge. And I'm like, wow, okay. So then I spent some time just looking at it. Okay, how can I fund this? What finance can I get in place? How much cash do I need? And then I ended up convincing my dad to come with me to auction, and we purchased this particular property. We got it on rent. I thought, actually, do you know, it's actually quite a nice semi-passive sort of income here. Yeah. And that particular year, we went on to buy 3 properties.
Yeah, nice. So that's interesting, and I want to know why it was. Let's say you never met his dad that night, or you never spoke to his dad that night. You think you would have ended up, becoming partners and going into business at some point? Or was that just literally the catalyst that...
I think that was the catalyst. So with the likelihood is I would have done property at some point. Yeah. But then I think, it was just the right moment. Everything sort of worked, the stars aligned, it was meant to be.
Before that, you was looking for something, wasn't you? You realized people were being redundant, they were losing their jobs.
I was looking at something, I was looking at property. And sometimes in life, you actually need some guidance. So people have mentors. You have someone that just holds your hand, just says, okay, this path that you want to go down is the right path. Yeah. And I think that was the moment for myself. And I'm always one of those people that feel you need to actually try. Don't be scared of failure. Just go try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. What I wanted to kind of understand is why like a partnership was formed. So I know you've been best friends for a long time since you were in school, but why was there a thing where it became a partnership? Why didn't you go, on individual paths into property?
I think it was mainly linked to the fact that Sanjay's dad said, look, go down this route. We have our own portfolios as well. So we've got properties that we've bought on our own that we managed, and they're all under the Savoys banner. What we did was on the elements that are a little bit more risky. So if we're doing some commercial to residential or something that requires more capital, it makes sense going into partnership with someone. So you leverage, the risk. But then sometimes during this course, it's a 6-month program when you're doing renovations, trying to turn something around. And sometimes you need to bounce support off each other. One thing Sanjay is actually really good at is the confidence aspect, and he doesn't really want to settle lower down. He was always pushing his boundaries higher. So I actually appreciated that aspect, and it actually again gives me drive. Okay, well, yeah, that's fine. It's for example, I'll just give you this particular example. It's just like if you go to in town, Sanjay's more the type, well, do you know, we should be eating at this particular restaurant. Why? You know, we shouldn't be, if you're from a certain background or whatever, our aim should be that, okay, we do well and we can actually go there. So that was one of the driving forces and just sort of pushing us forward.
Yeah. Is that what he kind of influenced onto you?
His influence has always been more, look, let's push. Let's do something that, we didn't think we could do. And then I sort of bounce off that as well. And then I come up with ideas, well, maybe we should have a look at X. And it's just having someone as a partner where you're just bouncing ideas and you're bouncing not just that, but just the adrenaline, passion, the desire to just move forward.
Yeah, so that trait he had where he was pushing for more and, he was saying, we should be eating here, we should have this. Did he always have that? Was that always a trait that from him from back in school?
Yeah, so his family background is on a sales background. Right. So he's always been quite highly driven, and he knows how to close deals, and he's been more exposed to seeing people from different backgrounds. Yeah. And just seeing like different elements of success. Obviously he's selling something to them, but they're only coming to him because they've done well themselves. And he's just seen different people from different backgrounds. And a lot of those people that he saw were from the property background.
Yeah. Okay. Sanjay's had his time now.
Yeah. That's
you've had your little
Let's cut him off now.
So for you, how was your background maybe in school? Do you have any kind of entrepreneurial moments back in school?
So I grew up in quite a working class background. My parents were both migrants from India. They came over. My dad worked as manual labor. My mum was working in a factory. But my dad had that desire, look, we can't really carry on like this. So he actually ventured out, purchased like a mini supermarket, like a grocery off-license business in West Drayton back in the mid-80s. He then ended up purchasing an adjoining takeaway business and got my brother to run that. So we were always quite business orientated. So on the weekends, the weekends were taken up going cash and carry with my dad, and like we're picking up stock, bringing in, loading, offloading. Even when I used to come back from school, Mondays, Fridays, first thing I'll have to do is before I even start my homework is stack the shelves. So that was always there, and that actually led me to wanting not to do that. I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to do whatever I can, but I don't want to be stacking shelves in this sort of business. So I was the first in my family to actually go to university. So I went to university as a management studies degree because I was so business focused. But at that time, you had a dot-com boom going on, late 90s. I then basically decided, okay, I want to sort of try to take advantage of this. I did a master's in computer science and then ventured in a career within IT.
Yeah, nice. So do you think, I really hope you're enjoying the show. I would just like to ask for 1 minute of your time to tell you about my sponsor whose support makes the show possible, CPC Finance. CPC Finance is a finance broker that specializes in sourcing and packaging a wide range of property funding. You name it, from buy-to-lets to commercial properties, auction investments, property developments. They are everything you'd want as a finance broker working for you on your property deal. They're extremely experienced. They know their market extremely well, which means they can move quickly. They're on the ball. They've been in the game for 30 years, which has enabled them to, one, build very strong relationships with a variety of lenders, which as an investor is super important, especially when things don't go to plan. Deals in certain situations aren't straightforward, which is often the case. They are bespoke specialists. And two, they have a brilliant understanding of all types of property investing. They know the strategies, they understand deal structures. There isn't anything these guys haven't seen, you know, they're seasoned pros. So if you're someone looking for property finance of any kind, go to cpcfinance.co.uk, and on the homepage you can schedule in a call at whatever time or day suits. So do you think as well, being around business when you was young and you know he had the shops, how much influence you reckon that had on you in terms of a businessman today?
No, it's had a massive impact.
Yeah.
I think our fathers, as you're growing up, they're role models. You look at them, but then you also then say, okay, look, my dad's doing this, but look, I want to just take it that little bit further.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, okay, what can I actually do? So I mentioned West Drayton, where we started the family business. But a lot of our investment now is in West Drayton. So a lot of the properties that we've renovated and stuff, it was all around there.
Yeah.
Because I grew up there. I'm like, okay, I could see what the area was like. It was a little bit deprived. It needed change. Myself and Sanjay wanted to now play an impact in providing some change there. So we're now one of the biggest landlords within that particular town.
Amazing. And how much did your dad expose you to like the finance side of the business?
So there was no particular finance there. Like my dad didn't really know too much about the finance, so
he was just doing what he could.
Yeah, he used the broker for the business loans. He didn't really understand too much of that. My mother took care of the mortgage aspect, but they purchased this business in mid-80s and rates went really high. I think late 80s, early 90s, they went really high. So I understood the aspect of, you know, their costs went up, and then we actually saw many people that were customers at the shop that were impacted with finance. So I knew that if I ended up going down, taking finance out, I needed to actually understand it more.
Yeah.
To leverage off that.
Yeah. So then fast forward in. So you went straight into IT.
Straight into IT, yeah.
After uni.
Yeah.
And then that's the point where you kind of met Sanjay's dad, went into property, and then talk me through that. And then how did you start navigating through property? How did you start purchasing them and going from one to the other?
So we were both working. I had started a job in IT, ended up working within the city, so it was whatever I could earn, refinance, we were taking that back out, purchasing more properties again.
What year was this as well?
Sorry?
What year was this when you kind of started acquiring properties?
So that was 2001.
Okay.
So most of 2000s, we were just buying buy-to-lets. We sort of specialized in, we wanted to have freehold. So we were starting on freehold starter homes. And that was our sort of basis. And everything that sort of came up, we were trying to buy. At that point, finance was relatively cheap, so you could purchase a property with 11% deposit. So if a typical price of a house was sort of 100, 150K, for example, during that period, you didn't need to actually save up too much to actually do that between two of you. So it worked. We were buying several properties a year, but then we realized, look, it's okay, you make a return, but it doesn't actually provide a lifestyle, provide a pension, you know, by the time we retire, but we wanted to now focus on now. Mm-hmm. So then the idea was, we looked at property and said, okay, where can we come in where we are in terms of the capital that we have, the drive that we've got, that we can actually make a difference.
Yeah.
the area that we looked at was HMOs. So we both know HMOs pretty well because we've lived in them.
Mm-hmm.
So as students, you live in a student HMO, which is basically a house share.
Yeah, yeah.
So we thought, okay, when we looked into this whole market, there were people that were doing student HMOs, and there were people that were doing local housing allowance HMOs.
Yeah.
And we realized the professional HMO market was being neglected, rental prices were increasing, and there was a market there for private professional HMOs, as in particular ensuite rooms. So what we did, I think this was 2010, we purchased a property in auction. It was a semi-occupied LHA HMO.
Right.
We purchased that, tried to run it. We worked out, look, having LHA tenants is not passive. It's actually quite labor intensive. We then basically, when we had the property empty, renovated this back to brick, and then made them all nice ensuite rooms. We rented it out. We learnt the process. It didn't actually have a lot of the outlets in terms of like spare room.
Yeah, yeah.
The stuff didn't really exist. Right move wasn't really catered for it because the lowest bedroom, it sort of goes down to the studio. It doesn't actually go down to the room. So we were using things like loot.com, I remember back then, to try to get rid of these rooms.
Yeah.
But as we were one of the early people within our area focusing on private professional HMOs, the market started to grow. We then were able to capitalize. You ended up with dedicated portals like spareroom.co.uk.
Yeah.
That will work for private, or there for professional tenants. And then, yeah, literally we just went from there.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit off camera about, just a minute ago, about how you was kind of balancing trying to get into property and build that business while doing your job at the same time, which is super interesting and what a lot of people go through. And probably what I'm doing as well, having a professional football career, and I'm trying to, build this property business as well. So I wanted to find out and talk a little bit about what that looked like for you. We mentioned about you having to send emails like middle of the night because that's the only time you could fit it in.
Sure.
What did that look like for you?
So I was literally working and doing this property stuff. So when we initially started off, it worked well because obviously Sanjay is working with family business. We were able to outsource a lot of the stuff in terms of the management to sort of local agents.
Yeah.
So our focus was then solely, purchasing properties, and renovating it. So I was balancing my time, like lunch breaks, sort of make phone calls and stuff. I'll go for a walk to
so
grab a sandwich.
Any spare hour you had
Any
was
spare
going
hour,
into the business.
And then literally I used to come home, once I had family time out the way, I used to then work from say 9 to midnight, maybe 12:30.
Yeah.
Just on looking up deals.
Single at that time or not?
No, I was married. So
kids?
No kids at that particular point.
Yeah.
But that's where my time was being taken up.
Yeah.
But I was passionate because I could see we're on the start of something special. And yeah, when you're passionate about something and you're spending the hours on it, it doesn't actually feel like work.
Yeah.
It's something that you want to do, and you've got like a vision. You can see what it's going to become.
Yeah.
So that's literally what I was doing, and I only stopped work 2017, and I think it was the 28th of November 2017. It was when I actually stopped. I was working in a city in a trading company at that point.
Right.
And I just thought, look, it's come to a point where we've done so much. I was financially free a long time ago, but I was just balancing.
Well, you continue to work.
I was just doing it because my wife was saying, well, why don't you, if you can do both, why don't you do that? Because obviously you get the paid holidays, you get this.
Yeah.
And even just getting lending is a lot easier when you've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I was leveraging that up, and it was working. And then I think Sanjay had a passion. He goes, look, why don't you just come full-time? If we're both
Was he
now,
full-time at that point?
He was, at that particular time, he left the family business maybe about a year and a half before that.
Yeah.
So he said, look, we can really push this forward. And at that point, I think I've been in a full-time job for probably 18 years at that point. And I thought, okay, look, the time is to actually to move on.
How did that feel?
It felt it was mixed emotions. So it was excitement, fear.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, your
Why so much
adrenaline's running.
fear if you was, you know, you kind of already financially free?
Because you're used to a routine.
Right. Okay.
So it's basically the same as you if you're a footballer and you see you remove it out. What do I do? Do I actually need this time?
Yeah.
So on. So there was a mixed emotion, and I'm one. If I'm going to now go 100%,
yeah,
it has to, you know, it has to be success.
Yeah.
You know, there's no point in me giving something up and then not making the most of my time that I've got. So the long and short of it was I gave work on the 28th of November 2017. 28th of November 2021, we won Commercial Property Developer of the Year at the Property Investor Awards. By that particular time, obviously, we've established a brand from scratch, and you know, we've brought everything back in house in terms of management, build. Everything's now under one sort of banner. Yeah.
So speaking about building a brand, I think that's something that you guys have done really well. You know, I've maybe known you guys for maybe a year or so, maybe a little bit more. And that's something that I realized, even going around to your properties, it's like you almost got a brand in your properties. So who's kind of the brains behind that? Or is it both, maybe
it's a bit of both. In terms of the logo design and stuff, that was Sanjay. So he actually came up with, we were thinking of a name and he wanted because we can't just have any name, it needs to be catchy. So once you've then, if we're now running with this, it's something that you know and you remember.
Yeah.
So he was like, look, something like Hilton, you know, works really well. So he came up with Savoys, Savoys Properties. He designed the logo because he's from that jewelry background. He implemented the gold.
So that was his family business, right?
Yeah. Sure. So the black on gold and the colors worked well. And I looked at it. Actually, yeah, that's right. Looks nice. And he had like several examples. We went through it. Actually, let's go with this one here.
Yeah.
So we got that, but then what we wanted to do was, as we're doing our properties, to have an identity. So if you have a look at a photo, you'll probably say, actually, this looks like a Savoys one. So we wanted to have that, and then we'll run through that theme through literally like all our properties. We'll change elements of it, but you want to continue a certain theme to it.
So what? So people to get familiar with the
so it's, but we're only focusing a local particular area. Half an hour sort of coverage from Uxbridge. That's our base.
Yeah.
The idea is not to sort of go national with the whole thing. It was literally, we're going to be masters of our own patch. And then we want to have an identity within that patch. So you've got tenants that move in, that actually love our product, that they will then recommend other people to. So which we have. And it works really well for us. But I think that all comes by having a set sort of look and feel to our places. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask that I'm kind of gauging a little bit is sometimes when I speak to certain businessmen or entrepreneurs about their vision and how they planned maybe quite far in advance what they wanted to set out, I'm kind of gauging with you guys, it was kind of like step by step where you didn't have like a huge vision 10 years into the future. You were just like hitting your capacity. What more can we do? Hitting your capacity. Is that kind of how it went or not?
Yes. So I think the best way to look at it is like there's no limit. So I don't want to say that this is our cap.
Yeah.
But like we're going to push. Our aim is to do more than what we want to write down on paper. But you have to have smaller goals. Okay, look, we want to focus on having X by this, and you want some. It's always nice to have some recognition as well from, say, the peers or people within your industry. But the idea is to keep pushing it forward, keep building, because our brand at the moment is going to be 2 years, 1st of April 2022. And considering within that period, we've got 500 tenants, we've done a partnership with Watford Football Club. We've been in several publications. We actually recently done a BBC Radio 4 interview in terms of commercial to residential stuff that we're focusing on. So we want to keep building on that basis. But our principles are always, look, we want to honesty, integrity, hard work. We want to, never forget where we've sort of come from, those elements. And we just want to keep pushing it forward. Because I find most people within this industry come out, they create a brand, they do well, and then they just want to monetize it. The difference with us and Savoys is we're yet to do any mentorship. We're yet to ask people for money to lend to us.
Which I'm sure you get a lot of people reaching out to you for.
You get a lot of that, but then what we've done within the industry is I look at all the people that fail within the industry and why have they failed? You know, they came out, they started requesting monies from people, offering ridiculous returns on there. They then impacted their business they were unable to deliver with their projects and actually hit the valuations they expected so they can pay these people back. And then you end up in a downward spiral. So our focus is, okay, we want to just keep building and we'll take it step by step. But there's no limit in terms of what we can achieve.
Yeah, nice. So you've kind of scaled quite quickly, would you say? We've
scaled quickly in terms of, like, obviously we've got over 20 years experience, but the last 2 years of it is on social media. Up until then,
but in terms of maybe acquiring, like, the amount of properties you have or the amount of rooms you have.
So a lot of it's been there over 20 years, and what we had is we built up like some houses, 2-3 bedroom houses.
Right.
So I've already owned those.
So it's just maybe the branding that was new.
The brand
not necessarily. It took you quite a while to acquire what you've acquired. You didn't get that
it's effectively like a 20-year overnight success.
Yeah.
So we've been there for 20 years. We've already had hundreds of rooms under us, but we just basically 1st of April 2020 we went into lockdown. And we had nothing but time, and we said, okay, let's utilize this time. So that's when we created the brand. That's when we said, okay, let's bring everything within house. And then we've pushed. So when on social media it looks like we've just popped out of nowhere. So these guys, how are they doing this? But it's been going on for a long time.
So why was it that beforehand you hadn't done the branding?
To be honest, I'm believe it or not, I'm quite a quiet, sort of secretive sort of guy. We weren't really coming out. So apart from immediate family, other people within my family didn't really know what we were doing. And it's like an Indian thing. You don't really shout out too much of what you're doing. So it was quite a revelation just coming out. And then what I realized was it actually opens up other opportunities by just telling people what you do. I
was going to ask, how much did it
it's benefit? Massive, because all of a sudden, obviously, we met the likes of yourself. And I remember coming to Wembley with my wife, Sanjay. Sanjay brought his daughter. We came to watch Liverpool versus Barcelona. 90,000 fans in the stadium, and obviously you were playing in midfield. So it was obviously quite a privilege to meet you. But so it just opened up doors. So like you get the NRLA has contacted us, BBC. You get other opportunities that you may not have got. And during that, we then use that as a learning process as well with some of the other professionals that we've got the opportunity to meet. Actually helps us within our business. So actually, maybe we're missing a trick here. Actually, if you do this, you can now, build more, or you've got this here. And so it actually does help by just telling people what you do, and then people approach you, and you've got the opportunity to add value to other people as well. So just by what we've been posting, people DMing us on social media, we've given some advice, and then come back as brilliant. Actually, I took your advice 6 months ago. I've actually bought my first property, and I'm doing this. Thank you so much.
Great point. Because even it's the same for me, really. Since obviously meeting, you've been a great kind of mentor figure for me. I've bounced a lot of ideas off you and advice. So it's a great point. The other benefits out there is that you're helping a lot of other people.
It's like our theory from the start was, even when we got into property, I was not on social media, but I was always saying to my friends, well, really, you need to be doing something, buying. And I've convinced probably majority of my friends to actually get into property. And these were some of the ones that have got in were the most risk averse. So they were the ones that are totally against it. But then today, several of them actually say, Malkit, that was the best advice you gave, because now I'm not too worried about my work, because I can leave it and I'll probably still be financially better off than if I didn't take those decisions.
No, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about what you've got going on at the minute. You're so obviously active with developments, acquiring more properties. You know, every time I meet you, you've got at least a few new ones. So what have you got going on at the minute?
So we've got, well, what we're actually doing under the Savoys thing is we're actually trying to help maybe 10, possibly 15 clients a year just to acquire properties in their name, develop them, help them with the refinance and so on.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we've got going on. And
that Game Changers? That's something separate, isn't it?
Yeah, Game Changer is
similar.
So I think in property and in life in general, if you want to be successful, you have to resolve people's problems.
Yeah.
So what we noticed within property was a lot of people were saying, well, look, you really want to be doing the HMO stuff. And then when we did the finances by them, they'll be like, well, I've got the money to actually purchase the property, but I don't have the money to actually do the build.
Yeah.
But then the end value actually stacks up. So we, partnering with CPC Finance, Ronald Fletcher Baker, and more importantly, Octane Capital, we're able to come up with a financial product where the bank will lend you 75% day one for the purchase, and they'll lend you 100% of the build. And you're not then stuck on a bridging term. They'll guarantee the exit onto a buy-to-let term afterwards. So that is something that we worked on last year, and
that could be huge, can't it, for property investors?
Well, we think so, because all of a sudden you don't need any experience. So you leverage the experience of us.
Yeah.
The bank leverage a lot of their risk off us as well, and it's a win-win for the clients.
Yeah.
So at the moment, in terms of, so we've got these particular Game Changer builds going on. We've got several commercial to residential, because we don't only do HMOs. We do a lot of the commercial to residential properties as well. What we find is if you want monthly income, you go down the HMO route, and that provides that for yourself or our clients. But if you want to actually make monetary gains in terms of purchasing a property, and then get a huge uplift, we find commercial properties, they're sort of 1/3 or a quarter of the value of residential. So if you can get the change of use, which is quite easy now with the new Class MA that's come in, but then you won't make a great deal once you're refinanced out per month, but you'll make a big monetary gain initially. So that's what we've sort of got going on. So HMOs, commercial, residential, and we're now just pushing, just trying to be a little bit more social, getting out and just meeting people like yourself and some other people that we've been contacted by on Instagram.
So what makes a good deal for you? What do you guys look for in deals?
In terms of a good deal, it's always one, sort of the price that you purchase at.
Yeah.
You need to now do your numbers, and then you need to know what you're going to exit at. What actually helps us is every deal that we do, we get a day one value, and then we get a guaranteed exit value with the lenders that we use.
Yeah.
And that basically just works out. So we know from day one what the risk is for us. If the end value doesn't stack up, then we know we need to either reduce our purchase price down or the build to actually reach this.
Yeah.
So that's just what works out for us. So a great deal would be to purchase a property, do the build, and then pull all your money back out and still own an asset that will appreciate, but also more importantly provide a monthly income as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask actually. Would you definitely prioritize cash flow over appreciation?
It depends on your goals. So initially when we started off, when we went down the HMO route, the reason for the HMO is we wanted to provide cash flow to provide a certain lifestyle for ourselves and our families. So once we've done quite a lot of HMOs, and that's why now we're helping clients do theirs. Where they're also focusing now more on commercial to residential conversions as well, because with the new rules changes, I think it's a great time to actually take advantage of that. So in 2013, you had the office to residential conversions when the rules came in, and that was a great time to actually do that. But then 2 years later, in 2015, owners of of these buildings has cottoned onto it, and the prices of these properties actually increased, and that opportunity had sort of passed.
Yeah, well, it's a good point, but the reason I asked that in terms of cash flow, and it's a good point you said that, it depends maybe your situation. If you've got like a good monthly income already, then maybe you're looking for more slow money, like appreciation. But the reason I asked that, because I think it's a mistake that a lot of athletes and footballers make, is that I feel like footballers should be almost in a hurry to build an income away from football, because at any moment things can happen, and it's it's a fragile kind of sport and industry. But a lot of the athletes, when they buy, all they think about is appreciation, and they don't maybe look at the cash flow, the returns that they're getting on that house. Which I think is a bit of a misconception sometimes.
Yeah, I think basically the big issue is you're influenced by your peers.
Yeah.
So when you look at footballers, like when you pick up a newspaper, I used to see like Mario Balotelli. He used to pull into the car park. He's got his Bentley, and he's got wrapped it with camouflage paint or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can get lost in the moment, but you need to be realistic and work out. It's never too early to be planning for your future.
Yeah.
So if you have these funds, you're best off putting them into a capital appreciating asset, as opposed to a liability in terms of like your own personal motor. And my personal opinion is, even if you buy a house to live in, it's a liability because it's actually costing you money to live in.
That's also another huge misconception. They see that as an asset.
Yeah, I read, which was quite fortunate for me, I read early on Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which had like a table just saying, look, these are assets, these are liabilities. And there's no issue on having a liability, but you just need to have more assets than liabilities.
Yeah. And as long as you know that it is a liability and not an asset.
Yeah. So look, we all like a nice car, so there's no point, there's no issue in having that, but you want to have a lot more assets to pay for that liability.
Yeah. But on that, I just feel like people might think it's an asset until maybe it's too late and you realize, oh, it's not. Yeah. When you get caught in a sticky situation.
Well, I think there's a couple of categories where you got footballers, you got musicians, and you don't know how long your window is within this career. Yeah. So unless the idea is obviously as a sportsman or a musician, you want to stretch it as long as possible, but you don't know whether your contract's going to get extended, or whether you're going to carry on selling records and so on. So you need to actually plan to have something that's going to sustain your lifestyle. Yeah. Growing up, I was a big fan of Jay-Z. Yeah. And if you have a look at him, he's someone that stretched his musical career out. But if you have a look at what he's done off music, is he's created several brands, and they're actually providing probably more income than he's probably ever made from his music career. Yeah, for sure. And that's also what I think we should, as athletes or musicians, should aim to do. Like you said, you never know when it's going to be over. But one thing I wanted to ask, and it's kind of something that we went over, we were talking about becoming financially free, and kind of just on the topic we were just talking about there, is now obviously you're not a materialistic person, but you like luxuries, you drive a nice car, etc. At what point did you get to where you felt like it's okay to start buying luxuries like that now? So we've always liked cars, but then I've always tried to do it within, when growing up, I'm like, 10K was a lot of money for a car. Yeah. Whereas Sanjay at that point, probably earning the same from my properties. He'll buy something for 30K. And I would just look at him, I'm like, actually, do you know what? Why am I so nervous of it? But then I think as I've got older, especially probably the last 5 years and stuff, I just thought, actually, you need to start enjoying a little bit more. Yeah. So, and again, it comes down to this assets and liabilities. As long as look, you've got this, and this will easily pay for literally everything, and you're gonna be able to still carry on. Because the main thing for me was I didn't want any purchases, either my own home purchase or like a motor vehicle, to actually impact what we actually enjoy doing, which is purchasing properties, renovating them. So long as it doesn't have an impact on that, then it's not an issue. But it's definitely a mindset thing. So what I find is you got maybe some people that are a little bit early on and they spend too much on a liability.
Yeah.
I was probably a lot later, so it takes me a while.
Yeah.
It's probably, and up until last year, that's probably three times more than what I probably ever spent on a vehicle.
Yeah, so you didn't necessarily have that problem when you was a bit younger and you was making a little bit of money, but maybe not enough to buy the things you wanted. You was always quite
my mind was always
spender.
set. Yeah, so I was always just reserved. So I always wanted good value. So I'm like, well, even if I spend this 10K in a couple of years, I'm more likely to get most of it back. So that was how I was always thinking. But that's just as a result of just coming from like a working class background, that you're always worried about risk. Yeah,
it was just to give maybe people a little bit of a insight into people that are really well educated financially, to what points they get to where they feel like it's okay to buy certain things. So for example, building up, if your passive income pays for it, that's maybe a indication that you could buy it rather than spending earned income. Is that something that you play by?
So the idea is that you want to be able to pay your your day-to-day running, so your mortgage, so on.
Yeah.
Whether you got your child in private school or whatever, you want to be able to cover all your costs, and then you can set aside. Okay, look. So once that's done, look, 10% of this, I'll happy to spend on liabilities, and the rest of this, I'm just going to now reinvest back into property. But the benefit you actually have now with electric vehicles is it's a massive write-off. So I think it's like you can write the whole value of the car off day one, even though you may only be paying that on monthly payments over the next 3 years.
Yeah. And how much effort and time do you go into learning things like that, learning the rules, learning tax rules?
So tax rules, I spend a lot of time on tax because you need to know it.
Yeah.
And if I sit with my accountant, if I'm going to go ask him about something about corporation tax or whether I'm buying an electric vehicle, I'm going to research it first because I want to ensure that if I question him on this, his response is in line with what I've read there. If it isn't, why isn't it?
Right.
But again, it's the same with what I do with property-wise. Just learning about planning rules. So if I'm specializing in HMOs, what's permit development, what isn't, if I'm armed with that information, and if I've got any issues, say from planning enforcement, I can point them in the right direction. Well, if you check this legislation, this is permitted development. And we've had to do that many times over the years.
Yeah. I kind of see, learning things about tax and, like you mentioned, learning things about planning, which sometimes could come across as boring, so maybe people don't look into it that much. But going with the theme of the show and the name of the money game, that's a perspective that I kind of have that makes it maybe more appealing to go learn about those things, like you would if you're playing any other game. You don't find it so much of a chore to go and find the rules of a certain game you're playing, whether it be a video game, for example. Do you see it like that? Is that why you're so eager to go learn those rules?
I remember listening early on in my, before I went into property, like life's a game, you understand the rules of the game, it's used to be played.
Yeah.
It's just the same as if you you're playing a video game. If you want to do well, what you do is you try to understand the rules. Okay, I've got this, these controls do this, but there's like a couple of cheats that I can do whatever in here.
Legal cheats, right?
Yeah, legal cheats. But it's the same with property. So you learn, okay, this is what I basically need to do. I don't need to understand every element of it, but if I'm going to HMOs, this is what I needed to understand. And many areas are very grey.
Yeah.
So I just became a master within that aspect of it. And then we were able to utilize that for our advantage. And it's just something now we've set up Savoys. People that come into it with their full-time jobs, they don't have that opportunity to dedicate time learning this. They can just leverage off us and we can then help them reap the benefits.
Yeah. And why was it so important to you to come up with something like that?
I think it's important to sort of give back. So I'm from a Punjabi community, and we're from a situation where we're always constantly just helping our community. And effectively it's the same now. I'm in this property community, and it just feels good to try to give something back.
Yeah.
You know, we've learnt a lot, and it's important just to help others reach their goals of heading towards financial freedom.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to when, you know, when that kind of moment where you had that chat with Sanjay's dad, you know, you're kind of realizing, you know, people are getting redundant, and you maybe had a certain type of worry about around money. How important was money to you then at that point compared to how important is, you know, making more money to you now?
So back then we didn't really have much money, so it was more important then than now.
Yeah.
For the aspect of it now is to actually enjoy what you're doing. So, you know, like I said, if you enjoy what you're doing and you're resolving people's problems, so the issues that people have within, like where we operate is, you know, there's a lack of good, affordable accommodation.
Yeah.
You know, there's many commercial properties now which are disused and needs to be repurposed. So we can tap into these sort of aspects. We can actually benefit the wider community, and when it comes to financial rewards, we are able to reap the benefits of those as well. Yeah,
no, it's good you said that, and you know, you're touching on you as well, going about making money for yourselves and your own livelihood, but doing so, you can also provide really good service and really good value for other people. So it kind of goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, and look, if you do something the right way, it benefits everyone within society, because you just have to have a look at our Google reviews. Even though we've been operating less than 2 years, we've got over 100 5-star Google reviews. We're 5-star rated on Google, and those 5-star ratings are actually from our investors, our landlords, and more importantly, the tenants. And at the end of it, when we're building these properties, they're for our tenants, and if we can get their seal of approval, it's actually quite rewarding for us.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great you mentioned that. And it's great to have people like you on here, because even like there was a bit of hesitation naming the show The Money Game, is because it can come across as maybe a bit superficial. We're talking about money, and then some people straight away they think money, Lamborghinis, watches, as opposed to, you know, you're making rooms for people, places to live, but as well you're reaping the benefits as well.
No, I agree, and I think, look, the biggest issue that I think schools have is they don't really talk about money.
Yeah.
I was under quite a benefit in terms of when I went to college, I did like a business related subjects. And I remember I had one of the tutors that actually came in, he pulled his credit card out and he goes, look, this credit card here, he goes, it's like a gift or a curse. So if you understand how to use this, you can get 56 days interest-free credit. If you pay it off, it's actually a very cheap form of borrowing. However, if you take this credit card, you know, you spend it on some liabilities and you're unable to pay it back, or you just make the minimum payments, you're now getting hit by 20% APR interest on this. It's actually quite a poor thing. So if you understand the rules related to money, you can actually utilize them and make it so it's actually beneficial for yourself. If you're able to use that and you make money for yourself, you're actually in a position to give back more to the community. Yeah.
So a question I want to ask, it would have been good to hear Sanjay's take on this as well, but I'll let you speak for him. How much better off do you feel like you guys are being in a partnership as opposed to individuals?
I think hugely beneficial. The reason being because we can leverage each other's time.
Yeah.
So for example, a few weeks ago, I was actually on holiday for a week, and I can go away for that whole week and the whole operation runs quite smoothly.
Yeah.
And it's the same with himself. So partnerships have its pros and cons, but I think if you've got the right person and you share the same journey and the same sort of goals, then it's actually very beneficial for ourselves.
Come in, what's the cons?
The cons is, like, obviously you're going to have some disagreements and arguments.
Yeah.
And I'm not really an argumentative guy. Sanjay's a lot more passionate.
Yeah.
So he's the one that tends to have most of the arguments. But look, so that is literally it. But we have to remember why we started something in the first place. So when we started in property, the idea was sort of financial freedom. So, you know, we've hit those goals. And obviously we're at a moment where we're now trying to build a brand. So if there are any disagreements is just to ensure that the direction that we're taking is correct.
Yeah.
For what it is, because now, whether we like it or not, Savoys is a reflection of us, and we want to now show it in the same light as we feel it should be showed.
Yeah. Was there, you know, speaking of the benefits of having a partnership, in one kind of way, I think that could be really handy is a time where things get really tough or maybe kind of shit hits the fan a little bit. Has there ever been a point like that where you've had to really come together and be like, yo, we need to buckle up here a little bit?
Well, yeah. So let's take into account COVID. So
yeah,
we're running a business and it's based close to Heathrow in terms of a lot of our lets. You know, a lot of our client tenants are either sort of based around Heathrow, based in offices that are in like one of Europe's biggest business parks, and COVID hits, and we don't have any answers to what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen. This is the first time you've been in this situation. In terms of, that's just on the letting aspect of our business. And then in terms of the builds, I remember we had 10 projects on bridging finance at that time. We went into lockdown, building was allowed to continue. We were able to scrape materials and stuff together using the internet, because most warehouses and stuff had closed. So we were able to continue, but even once we completed these projects, I remember we completed 6, and I couldn't call a valuer out because the banks weren't allowing them to come out, but the projects were done. I couldn't get off this bridging finance. You know, it was quite a tough time, and we then had to just leverage of each other, you know, pull each other's, look, we're gonna be all right. Look, has the fundamentals of our business changed in terms of people still need good, affordable accommodation to rent? Is that going to change? Look, post-pandemic, no. So we just carried on, and it was probably the best thing that we've done.
Yeah. Oh, nice. What kind of stage do you reckon you guys are? How much more potential do you reckon you've got to achieve?
So we're actually, what we've effectively done is we've just gone back sort of 20 years. So in terms of, you know, we went through this whole journey where we were doing things and we were there was no banner. Now all of a sudden, when we've created this brand, we've started something, and it's like it's a baby.
Yeah.
You know, you want to feed it, you want to help it grow. You know, we want to see it grow. You know, so we're at that aspect of it. So we're now re-energized, reinvigorated, and we're keen to go, and we want to see what it can become.
Yeah.
So it's actually like, we feel like, you know, the next 10 years, we're really looking forward to it.
Do you know, I was really interested in and intrigued to hear the answer, because being in football and being a professional footballer, it gets to a point where, like, when you hit like around 30, there's a bit of a myth where like you kind of start to feel a bit old, as if, like, you know, things are coming to an end, your career's coming to an end. But then the good thing about being in business has kind of shift my perspective a little bit, is that, you know, there's people that are, how old are you?
I'm 44.
Do you mind saying that?
No,
44. 44.
Yeah.
But then there's like, you look at that and you guys are like just still at it every single day. You've got so much more planned, and it's just really refreshing to see. And I'm glad that, you know, I can be in business and be around guys like you that are like at 40 and just energized way more than, you know, people around me that are younger and 28 that feel like, you know, their life is coming to an end. So it's refreshing to see.
No, but again, I think it's the same with, we were talking earlier, like athletes and like musicians and stuff. You have to, if you have a look at some of the most successful musicians, like someone like Madonna, you realize every time they come out, you have to reinvent yourself. And then effectively you have to do that within football, because as you age and, you know, you have to change your game style.
Yeah.
You know? And that has a major impact, and that then also keeps you going.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, nice. Want to finish up with a quick fire round?
Okay.
So short answers, minimal words. Can you give us a wealth hack?
I would basically leverage off other people within the industry that you're in. They're successful. Get with them, speak to them, and you learn from them, and that's a key way of progressing. Yeah,
I actually put a note here a little bit, because I felt like you were going to say that, because that's one thing I realized about you guys. I think you really like invest in networking, and you invest in like communicating with people. You put a lot of effort into that. That's one thing I realized about you guys, which I kind of thought you would say that, which not a lot of people do. I don't think they don't.
No, I think life's all about relationships. So
yeah,
if you like, I'll give you an example. I talk about Jay-Z, but if you have a look at his career, and his career has been going in excess of 20 years, if you have a look, he starts with someone. Once they can't meet his expectations, he drops them and he moves to someone else, and he's gone through that for 20 years, and now he's just solely on his own.
Yeah.
And he just basically has people that he liaises with, but your network is actually essential. So we've got our own sort of powerhouse with our brokers, solicitors, the lenders that we work with, our build teams, etc. But that's basically where what pushes you forward.
Yeah. Who or what has the biggest influence on you as a business?
In terms of not property wise, but obviously like in terms of just as a business itself, like someone like Jay-Z, where I refer to him quite a bit because he's created like a brand, like he's created Armed Brigade, which is Ace of Spades, and he created that from nothing. It was an unknown brand, and all of a sudden it's well known, and it's up there with some of the heavyweights in Champagne. So it's effectively, I look at that as our blueprint in terms of what we're doing with Savoys.
Yeah.
So you're building it. You come out with a bit of a bang. You're making the right headway, and you keep sort of growing it. So that's our.
Is he someone you've always looked up to for a while, or is it kind of a recent thing?
No, it's been since sort of college days.
Yeah.
96.
Okay, cool. Also, one other thing we were talking about off camera a little bit was touching on kids and our kids. What are your thoughts on private school versus public school?
I grew up in sort of a working background in sort of a poor neighborhood, and I remember going to school at the age of 11, and they gave me a spelling test. They said, "Can you spell pink?" And I was like, P-I-C-K. So it shows like schools have a big impact. So
sure.
If you're in a position to go private compared to state, then I think it's a positive thing, and then it also actually changes you as a parent the network around as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It has a massive impact. Yeah. But I understand it's not available to everyone because of their financial circumstances.
So I think some people may see that as a no-brainer, like, oh, private school 100%. Then you just look about it and think about like people like yourselves who you didn't come from a private school. No. But you've gone on to do really well.
No, but the advantages private school children have is they actually grow up, and without them knowing, they've got this network that they went to school with that will end up in certain positions.
Do you feel like there's any risks in there? So would you have not have done as well as you have now? Maybe if you went to a private school, could it have been different?
I think as an individual, you always have that belief that you can do it. Do well regardless of your circumstances. But I think what we did was we used things that were sort of conceived as a negative in terms of sort of our background, even in terms of my name. Like most people call me Malik, because when they see my name, like I'm like, okay, rather than like what people tend to do is shorten it down, like, call me Mal or Mel. Yeah, I'll use that as my advantage, something to sort of energize me to push forward.
Yeah, cool. Last two, biggest risk you've taken?
I think the biggest risk that we actually took was we purchased an office block in Buckinghamshire. It was 670. We actually had to move and purchase it sort of cash within a matter of days. Yeah. So we raised it within sort of our group of companies and our network. Went in, we didn't actually have all the full planning in place, but we did that. We spent £500,000 on the build, and then we've ended up having that valued at £2.5 million. So it was a big risk because there was a lot of unknowns, and we had to exchange and complete on it without having all the finance and stuff in place. But we reaped the rewards of it afterwards. Yeah.
Just wanted to make a reference as well to the sponsor of the show, which is CPC Finance. I know you work really closely with them for the last few years.
Yep.
How influential have they been for you guys?
They've been hugely influential because in terms of a broker, you want someone that one has the knowledge, two has the confidence, and they also need to sort of inspire yourselves. Like, if I pick the phone up to Carl at CPC, I want to say to him, look, Carl, this is the deal, look, this, can I get the funding on this? And can I get it within this timescale with his auction? Or if it's a private treaty sale, but I need to basically exchange in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Can you get me someone that will lend the money within this? And he gives us that particular confidence to do that, which has played a massive part in pushing our business, and even starting Savoys off. He played a key bit in just giving us the confidence of, like, you know, you guys can actually go out and do this.
Yeah, yeah. No, nice. Perfect. Last question. Who's a better businessman, you or Sanjay?
Obviously me. No, we've both got different attributes, and we're good at certain things.
Yeah.
So Sanjay's got he's the more flamboyant. He wants to just do a deal. He doesn't really want to do anything like where he has to actually put some hard work in. But whereas myself, I do all the analytical stuff and just make sure the deal works. So it bounces. We both bounce off each other, and I think we're as M&S, as Savoys, we're probably the best business people.
Yeah, yeah. Who's richer? I'm joking. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much.